Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, we see how Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska is rebuilding, years after a massive flood caused its air mission to move to a nearby airport. Plus, new conversion kits for special operations vehicles designed for the Arctic. And later in the show, we see how one drone manufacturer is trying to get supplies to Marines, and fast. And finally, service members and veterans are increasingly becoming targets of military-themed scams. Learn about a new resource to keep your money in your pocket. We have all that coming up for you on today's episode. It's the latest in news and analysis from the Pentagon to the platoon, here on Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Andrea Scott. Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska was hit by heavy flooding in 2019, but it's on the road to recovery. Base leaders invited Defense News Weekly and Air Force Times to see efforts firsthand.
3 years after a major flood, Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska is still recovering. Aircraft of the 55th Wing are based there and serve critical national security roles. Those planes include the RC-135 Rivet Joint Reconnaissance Plane and the E-4B Night Watch, more commonly known as the Doomsday Plane. Those aircraft had to be relocated to a nearby commercial airport as the base recovers, and while an aging runway is being rebuilt. Major Eric Armstrong is the Deputy Director of the effort to rebuild Offutt.
In March of 2019, the Midwest experienced a bomb cyclone event that brought severe snowfall, followed by warmer temperatures almost immediately afterwards, and rain, causing all that snowfall to melt off across the Dakotas and northern Nebraska. All of that water worked its way through the watershed, down into the Missouri River, and the water backed up along the levee system. The levees at the time were about 3 feet lower than they are now. And the levee to the south of the base was overtopped, and water moved across the fields and eventually onto Offutt Air Force Base. Where we're sitting right now, on the morning of March 19th, 2019, the wing had a crisis action team meeting right inside the building to my left here. And at the time, there was just a little bit of water in this ditch that you see behind us, and we weren't sure kind of what the scope and scale of what that was going to look like. However, in less than 12 hours later, this area right here was under about 5.5, 6 feet of water, 4 feet inside the buildings. And the area from that point was basically a total loss. So this is the demolition and site prep phase of the reconstruction of the flood damage at Offutt Air Force Base. And what we're seeing are the operational facilities, so the OSS, the operations group, the wing headquarters, and the 55th ISS buildings, which have been removed of all of the furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And asbestos mitigation is complete inside those buildings, and we're ready to begin tearing them down in order to build new foundations and pads up above the flood height level for a 100-year flood, and construct new replacement operational facilities for the 55th Wing. We're making the most of the real estate we have available to us on Offutt Air Force Base, as this is the demolition and site prep phase. Eventually we'll be building 8 new campuses, or facilities dedicated more specifically to the mission that the 55th Wing needs. We'll have an operations campus, a security forces campus, a nuclear command and control alert facility campus. All of those facilities will regenerate us back to the 100% 55th Wing mission capability.
And that's not the only construction. The 70-year-old runway that services critical planes with national security missions is being reconstructed. We received an update from the base construction lead.
So the old runway had exceeded its life expectancy. We were pushing 70 years on what we consider a 40-year life cycle for a runway of this nature. We were seeing a lot of just decay, general joint damage and spalling. It was delaying the mission. So we had to perform multiple emergency procedures increasingly over the years. And then we had to take more and more downtime, planned downtime, to come out and repair the runway. That delayed the mission throughout the years. So here today, we're paving both concrete and asphalt, and we have crews putting in lights and other types of conduit to prepare for reopening in September, October of this year. So the new runway is going to be a mixture of concrete and asphalt. And it'll be approximately, the runway itself will be the same width, but the paved surface will be approximately 100 feet narrower.
And how are pilots going to like it?
I would hope the pilots love it.
Several efforts are underway at Offutt, including facilities for airmen who are supporting the Ukrainian military with reconnaissance. They are currently working in a secure location that is falling apart and under a motor pool with poor air circulation. Read Rachel Cohen's in-depth coverage at airforcetimes.com. And in more news from around the military, special operations units in the Army are due to get some Arctic-ready conversion kits for some of their vehicles. Currently in validation testing, the kits turned wheeled lightweight all-terrain vehicles into snow-ready tracked vehicles. The MRZR Alpha is set for use by U.S. Special Operations Command as a light tactical vehicle. Both the vehicle and the kits are made by Polaris. Those kits also include additions to the cab of the vehicles to protect troops from the elements and are due to be rolled out in 2023. And the Biden administration has approved a plan to once again deploy hundreds of U.S. troops into Somalia as part of counterterrorism efforts following a withdrawal under President Donald Trump. President Joe Biden also approved a standing authority for U.S. Special Forces to target leaders of al-Shabaab, a terrorist group linked to al-Qaeda. The precise number of troops to be sent to the Horn of Africa nation was not announced. Finally, 4 cadets from the Air Force Academy may not graduate or be commissioned as officers this month because they have refused COVID-19 vaccines. Officials said the cadets may also be required to pay back thousands in tuition costs, according to the Associated Press. COVID-19 vaccinations have been mandatory for service members since 2021, including students at the branch academies. But the Air Force is the only one to have threatened to keep cadets from graduating. The outcome is not yet set in stone. The cadets have 2 weeks to decide whether to get vaccinated or leave the program. When we come back, we learn about a drone that could be resupplying Marines in the near future. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Andrea Scott. The Marine Corps wants an unmanned aerial system that can resupply troops. At the recent Modern Day Marine Expo in Washington, D.C., we visit Command's booth. They showed us their half-scale model of their cargo UAS, which they hope will make it to Marine units soon.
Raman, we're in front of the Command Cargo UAV. It's a medium-sized logistics UAV. Tell us about its capabilities.
Yeah, sure. So cargo UAV is really designed to carry a medium payload, and by medium I mean up to 800 pounds. So think about carrying, a payload of 600 pounds, for example, 150 nautical miles, 160 nautical miles. And we designed it that way because we envision, much like the Marine Corps leadership is talking about expeditionary advanced base operations, for example, small teams could be distributed across hundreds of miles. So the ability to resupply and make real throughput, so at heavier payloads is really what we were targeting. So we use a turbine engine so that we can get good power, we can get good range and good speed capability so we can deliver that throughput.
And I imagine range is a big factor. What kind of times does it fly and what kind of distances?
Yeah, so, well, you'd have to do the math, right? I mean, the VNE, or the maximum airspeed for this vehicle, is about 120 knots. We're going to validate that through flight testing later this summer.
And we'll iterate to that. So, a demonstrator is not going to achieve the maximum speeds that you might get out of the production model, but certainly we expect to hit speeds of about 100 knots during tests this summer. But you can, that's the idea, right? If you're gonna transit long distances, you need something that has a little bit of speed. It doesn't need to be light speed, but it needs to be fast enough to be able to deliver a good amount of throughput in, for example, one period of darkness.
How far does it have to go?
So we designed cargo UAV to self-deploy out to 520 nautical miles. So the idea being that we realized that real estate on the amphib ships, on the naval, on warships, and even on some commercial shipping that is going to support this EABO concept, we don't want to create a logistics burden, with our logistics solution. So the idea might be, you might launch this from a rear area, fly this on a self-deploy mission to the EABO or the advanced base, and really you get it in the hands of the actual operators that are going to be using it. And then they simply reconfigure with a conformal pod or maybe a sling load, depends on what mission they want to execute. And these just run cyclic operations, throughout the entire operation while those Marines are operating forward.
And I imagine you designed this so that it works for amphibious Marines, not necessarily Marines doing counterinsurgency in Afghanistan as they were doing a few years ago.
Yeah, well, the big idea here is, we focused on the Indo-PACOM theater, so we take a look at the geography there, and that's why we chose something that would give us a reasonable range, right? So short distances, there are certain applications for that, but yeah, you're right. So there are going to be times, we believe, when the ships have to remain outside of an enemy threat envelope, which is why we want to have a long range to be able to self-deploy to get to a forward area.
And how is it controlled? Is it autonomous or is it remote control?
It is autonomous. So we're partnered with a company called Near Earth Autonomy. They provide the autonomy solution on cargo UAV. We have a long history with Near Earth. In fact, Near Earth worked on an ONR program called AACUS many years ago, several $100 million program, and I'm happy to say we're able to carry that work forward on a real solution that could deploy one day very soon.
And you said it can carry up to 800 pounds?
Right.
How does it carry it?
So you can, there's a few options here, right? So the conformal pod is really what you see on the model. It's essentially a hollow composite pod that you can stack whatever equipment you need to in there. Alternatively, you can do an external long line application. For example, if you needed to deliver supplies into a jungle canopy area that didn't have a suitable, what we call a drop zone or a landing zone. We're even experimenting with some ideas on maybe aerial delivery. If you're familiar with the Joint Precision Airdrop System, maybe it's a GPS-guided parachute that guides the pod down to if you're in a mountainous area, for example, and you don't want to try to land equipment on a slope or something like that, maybe you use that. There's a lot of different ways that you can support this throughput, this sustainment.
And Raman, when you were in the Marine Corps, you were an Osprey pilot.
I was. Yeah.
Well, what's some sort of technology that is in this vehicle that you wish you had in the Osprey way back when?
Yeah, so here's the thing, here's the interesting thing about cargo UAV. I would answer that in an opposite way. I would say that this is actually a very simple machine. So I remember days when I would load up my Osprey, my $100 million Osprey with pallets of water, for example, to deliver it to Marines that were only 10 miles away. So here we had a beautiful $100 million machine that was designed to go hundreds and thousands of miles and deliver troops into combat and bring them out, but we were using it in this way and exposing it to risks, waiting in the landing zone, hoping that, a bad guy wasn't going to drop artillery or mortars on you while you were unloading pallets of water. The idea here is you use something like this, a relatively low-cost UAV, to do that mundane, dirty, dangerous work and preserve your more exquisite platforms for those high-end missions that they were designed to do.
I see. And Raman, thank you so much for bringing us out.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
And now for defense dollars. The Department of Defense has countless uses for microchips, but manufacturing and supply chain can always be accounted for. In fact, the Semiconductor Industry Association estimates that components for some chips can travel more than 25,000 miles from locations around the world before completed. That leaves a lot of room for unsecure and counterfeit chips, and it's a major concern for the Department of Defense. U.S. President Joe Biden has highlighted efforts to increase domestic production.
America invented these chips, and federal research and development led to the creation of these chips. We're going to stamp everything we can made in America, especially these computer chips.
One company is announcing its official launch from a Scout Ventures incubator in Virginia, and it's offering technology that says it can fight chip counterfeiting. Chiplytics has a device, the Chiplytics One, that screens chips that are going into critical systems. The company says it's the first inspection platform that combines electrical and optical testing so that it can build a data set that will detect small differences to identify clones, counterfeit, or damaged chips. India has halted negotiations with Russia to acquire early warning helicopters that India says it needs for its aircraft carriers. India was set to buy 10 Kamov Ka-31 aircraft for $520 million. An Indian Defense Ministry source who asked to remain anonymous told Defense News that India had concerns over Moscow's ability to execute orders. That's on top of issues related to payment transfers. When we come back, the latest from our personal finance expert on family finances during a PCS. Welcome back. On this edition of Money Minute, Navy Federal Credit Union personal finance expert Jeanette Mack gives military families financial tips for PCSing.
When you receive permanent change of station orders, a lot more than your address is going to change. Taking command of your finances from the start can help lessen the stress of moving for you and your wallet. So first things first, find out if you're eligible for PCS entitlements and benefits so you can get leave time or be reimbursed for expenses you might pay out of pocket. You'll definitely need a good budget so you can afford expenses like new furniture, utility hookup fees, and the things that'll help you get settled in. Even if you think it's covered by the military, add it to your budget just in case. And don't forget to keep track of your receipts. And of course, one of the most important things before a PCS is saving money. Every dollar counts in helping you get to your destination. Talk with your financial institution about special savings accounts that can help you budget and earn interest over time, so you'll always be prepared for the next PCS. Prepping and thinking ahead means you'll easily handle every next move you make.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next week. To get more of our coverage, be sure to head on over to Army, Navy, Air Force, and MarineCorpsTimes.com and DefenseNews.com for the latest. And to wake up to headlines from across the military and defense spaces every weekday, sign up for our Early Bird Brief. And make sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Service members are at a higher risk of being scammed than the general public. See how to protect yourself after the break. Stick around. AARP recently conducted a study that showed that 1 in 3 service members and veterans have lost money to military-themed scams. They have recently launched a Veterans Fraud Center and joined us to give you tips on staying safe.
Troy, welcome back to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. It's awesome. Thank you.
So AARP did a study with military personnel and veterans, found that 1 in 3 reported that they'd been victims of fraud that is military themed. Tell us about what they've been seeing out there.
Almost 40% veterans are more likely to lose money to scams than our regular civilian population. You know, that total just in 2021 was 267 million, and that's up from 102 million in 2020. So, and that was according to the Federal Trade Commission as well report. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to work and figure out something that we can do that veterans and their families could have an online resource that was to protect them and very easy to access. And that's when we launched back in April our AARP Veterans Fraud Center.
And we'll get into the fraud center here in a little bit, but what kinds of fraud are people seeing? Is it mainly phone calls? And people saying maybe they're from an old unit or something?
Yeah, great question. What we found is that those top scams were mainly in 3 main buckets. And those main areas were benefit buyouts. That's turning over like your U.S. Department of VA pension or disability benefits to this supposed lump sum payment, that never materializes. In the survey that we conducted, 47% was that. Fraudulent record scams, paying for updating your personal military records. Let me just share with the audience here, you never have to pay for your personal military records. If you hear that, it's an automatic scam. And what is being used is something called a DD Form 214, which is our official military record. If anyone says that you have to pay for that, that is hang up the phone immediately and move on. And then lastly, the big one was the fake charity giving request, harping on veterans, their focus for that second mission when you're out of the military. The scammers are really focused on that to go ahead and scam our veterans and their families.
Last year, AARP made a one-stop shop for military veterans and military families to have jobs. And now there's a new one-stop shop for fraud.
Absolutely. With our AARP Veterans Military and Families Initiative, we have our 4 pillars approach. We want to protect military families from fraud. We want to make sure they have caregiving resources. We want to connect them to their military service benefits. And we want to make sure that they can re-career through our job center. So this fraud center, this new online education and resource center, is there to help our veterans look at these scams, be aware of them, and be prepared to fight back. I'll tell you, targeting scams, of members of the military is just unconscionable. We want to alert veterans and their families to fraud that's out there and how they can prevent it. And this is what this one-stop shop does. Very excited about it.
And is it mostly veterans who are being targeted, or are you seeing people in active duty being targeted as well?
Oh yeah, what we're finding is that it's veterans, current military, their families. So it seems the military community as a whole, they're being targeted because, and what we're finding is that the scammers know that these veterans and current military and their families have access, to these pensions, access to these specific benefits. So if you can go ahead and get a scam done, that could really impact them, but that's where our free resources within the center is very helpful. Our new AARP Watchdog Alert Handbook, the direct helpline number to the Fraud Watch Network, and our work with our Operation Protect Veterans. So all those free resources are there available for our veterans and their families to protect them, which is outstanding.
I see. And if someone has a suspicion where something might be right, might be wrong, where should they go?
I think the first place that we should start is that if you think you've been scammed, is contact our AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline. We have dedicated volunteers that are there that will take the scam, listen to you, take down the information, and most importantly, share it and make sure that we get that shared across the entire, across our entire enterprise. And you can call at 1-877-908-3360. And then what that allows us to do is to do watchdog alerts that alert people of scams that are happening. And then most importantly, we have a scam tracking map to where people can go into this landing page, go into this scam tracker, put in your zip code. And once you put in your zip code, you can see the top scams that are in your area. And that to me is the true benefit of this, to where it just really helps you zero target what's going on in your area.
Troy, we've talked fraud before on this show, and you mentioned a no script. What is one?
A no script is very simply when you receive that phone call and it's asking for your military service records, and that it does not, something sounds fishy. So I think at that point, that's when you sit back and you say to that person, have your no script available. Say, thank you very much, but I'm not interested. My answer is no, and have a great day, and hang up the phone. Disengage from that particular contact. When you do disengage from that contact, you have your no script available. That way you're just prepared. It's being ready to act automatically. You hear the scam, go ahead and make the switch, use the no script, and then you can move on for the rest of your day. So develop that no script, please.
And Troy, as you know, that money, those benefits are things that are earned by service members. So thank you for coming on and letting us know how to protect those benefits.
Well, it's a pleasure, and it's very important that we, I want to share those red flags with everyone. But I'll leave you with this. Please, as a veteran, military, current member, you never have to pay for your own service records. Make sure that you have your no script available, and make sure that if you are scammed, make sure you're reported through our AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline. And those are some things that you can do to really protect yourselves as we move forward.
Troy Broussard, thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And that's all we have time for this week. Please visit us on militarytimes.com and defensenews.com for more coverage. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.